Be smart, dummy, dummy, be smart. He said that fool, you weren't cool. He took a book to your school. Be smart, dummy, dummy, be smart. Don't get shocked if you get mocked. It's what you find when you use your mind. Don't you sweat it, look 'em in the eye. Don't regret it, hold your head high. Be smart, dummy, dummy, be smart. Try to show some tenderness, even when they're playing chess. You think it's dumb to be smart? But that's the way you make art, so be smart. Dummy, dummy, be smart. Use your brain, that's a start. It's okay to...
Hi, I'm James Eade, and this is Change Your Mind. Now, I live in the divided states of America. You know, we're divided states. And how do we become united again? I think it's because we have to change our minds. And we've been spending so much time trying to change other people's minds. It doesn't work. I think it's an inside job. We got to work on ourselves and change our minds. And I have a guest today who's going to try to change my mind about a topic that, well, I have heard a lot about it lately. It seems to be in the news quite a bit. Laws are being passed and people are anti-trans. And so I'm going to have the Reverend Daniel come on and tell me, why is everybody upset about trans? Hi, Reverend Daniel.
So that is Universal Life Church for 43 years, Reverend Daniel. I was like 19 when I accepted instant ordination by decree from another reverend who had performed like thousands of marriages, even with his credential. But I've only done one funeral with mine, and I kind of messed it up. Yeah, it was terrible. The computer wouldn't plug into the funeral home's projector, and
oh my goodness, yes.
Yeah, it just went downhill from there. But anyway, I'm available. You hear that, dead people?
So I've read about these laws being passed that are anti-trans, and can you tell me why this is, and what's the thinking behind it, or am I just are you not the right guy to ask?
You know, we get a lot of discussion in the transhumanist community about people confusing us with the transgender community, but we're not the same thing, although we do have overlaps. You know, we both believe in what you might call morphological freedom, that, you know, you own your body, you should have autonomy over your body when you don't infringe on other people's similar rights. Kind of like the non-aggression principle in the libertarian movement. And, you know, coincidentally, the libertarian movement and the transhumanist movement have a couple things in common. You know, they're both big nets. You know, they're both big categories. Let me get my get on screen. They're big categories. They're this big. And when you have a big category, you're going to get all flavors with libertarianism, people that want more individual liberty and want to limit the power of centralized authority. And with transhumanists, you're going to get people that want to improve the quality of life with technology. But at the extreme end, you're going to find people that want to download themselves into non-biological substrates, for instance, or that want to become...
So I got to switch gears here, and you're talking about something else completely. You know, I went to high school with a guy that works for the Cato Institute now and is a libertarian, and we used to argue all the way to lunch, argue during lunch, and then all the way back from lunch. You know, but his point of view as a libertarian was defensible to my way of thinking. You know, I didn't fit into that. So now the transhumanist, you mentioned it, there's some libertarian aspects to it. How would you differentiate between libertarian and transhumanist?
Well, there are transhumanists that aspire to a more technocratic organization of human governance. You might call it a technopolis or a technocracy. There actually was a movement in the 30s called the technocracy movement. I think the guy's name was Robert Howard, and he had, the country was trying to come out of the massive depression of 29. And
sure,
he was proposing things like labor certificates that had an expiration date. which was actually a pretty clever idea. It was kind of an early way to implement sort of a social rewards credit kind of system. The fact that you had these energy labor certificates and they had an expiration, so you couldn't hoard them. You had to move the wealth through the economy. That was an important idea. You almost might say the Federal Reserve was trying to do some of the same things by playing with interest rates and velocity of money. Of course, there's a lot of people that hate the Federal Reserve, and they just think just get rid of it. Oh yeah, that's a whole other show.
Yeah.
But to effectively argue something, you really need to be able to argue both sides of the issue in a debate, and you need to be able to explain it to an 8-year-old. So I think someone said about quantum physics, or you don't understand it yourself. Right. So,
well, if it doesn't make you dizzy, you don't understand it. That's my quote. But what I took away from libertarian, which was attractive to me, was there's an argument against a centralized authority, and so it was like the appeal was a decentralization of authority. And my understanding of the transhumanist is that there's something to that as well, or am I misinformed?
Well, anyone who wants to improve the quality of human life through technology utilization is somewhere on the transhumanist spectrum.
Okay.
So now this calls up maybe some philosophical or linguistic ideas. What is technology? What is natural versus what is unnatural? I mean, now we're getting off into some kind of a philosophical, epistemological, all different branches of discussion. But you could say as soon as we started using fire and putting
Tools.
Clothes on, if you wear glasses, you're using technology to
Sure.
have better quality of life. So that's the most sort of palatable way to introduce people.
Well, people are triggered by all sorts of things these days. That I've always found if you can be a little bit more detached from a subject and look at it with calm detachment and discuss it. I found that to be more useful than getting my Irish up, is the way we used to call it, and to get very emotionally involved on one side of the argument or the other. But I'm trying to understand the transhumanist, and you're talking about the use of technology, and I think I have certainly no fundamental issue with using technology. I mean, I know so many people that have had their knees replaced, and and I'm looking at some point having a hip replacement, and I'm grateful that those advances and have been made. I mean, my mobility is getting worse, and if I could regain it, I don't understand the argument against it. So,
well, people, for instance, might say, "Oh, you're just privileged because you're wealthy and you have access to these life-enhancing technologies. What about all the poor people that don't? It's unfair for you to have access and other people don't." And this is kind of like the nun at a big banquet, and she only took very small portions because she said, "I don't want to eat more than what other people in the world have to eat." And that is a common feature in religions, that it's more blessed to give than to receive, whereas in Western society it's like he who has the most toys wins, kind of thing. So it's kind of like the exact opposite of a lot of spiritual orientations. But I think there's a happy medium that can be achieved. But you're right, equanimity of mind is crucial in being an understanding of something, and even in being effective at making change. I think there was an activist that said, "You're most effective as an activist if you're not tied to the outcome." And I'm sure there's pros and cons about that, but there's a grain of truth there that I think should be studied and perhaps emulated.
So, one of the reasons I have you on the show is that you're on a party, the Transhumanist Party, that is, and you're the vice presidential candidate. So far, my facts are correct.
Yes, we're a United States Transhumanist Party is a pretty young party. We founded in 2016 when our candidate was Zoltan Istvan, who drove a coffin bus across the country to show the anti-death, beliefs of the Transhumanist Party. But now, after a few more iterations, what are we going to be 8 years old in 2024? Now we've got Tom Ross, who's a great science fiction writer and metaphysician and amazing artist. Really kind of a polymath Renaissance guy. I'm really glad he's on the ticket. In fact, we have about 4,000 members, but only about 300 or so voted to endorse the choices for president and vice president. And as a matter of fact, it was just Tom and me on the ballot, and we kind of made an agreement. Hey, whoever loses for president, we'll pick the other guy for vice president. So that was awfully nice of Tom to do that, because I got a lot. I've run for city council 3 times here in Thousand Oaks before, so I'm kind of a political animal, and I ran with U.S. Transhumanist Party ideas about how to make this a better city. I think there are scalable ideas that not only work at the local and national, but actually at the Spaceship Earth level. Big fan of Bucky Fuller, and that's and Henry George. They both use that Spaceship Earth overview effect language terminology. So in November 5th, mark your calendar, 2024.
Hey, small is beautiful.
Yeah, right. Now, we're always going to have a 2-party duopoly until we change to ranked choice voting or some kind of system that's not just first past the post wins, which is kind of a winner take all system we have now. But we can use this to get our ideas, and caucus with the powerful parties and get their policies shifted into more evidence-based directions. We're the party of facts and science and evidence, and not political trench warfare. We're not, using wedge issues to get people, all riled up and, oh, I'm only coming out to the, polls to vote because they're talking about my big wedge issue, abortion or gun rights, or, there's lots of
I'm starting to change my mind a little bit here. Facts and evidence, and that sounds like an intelligent way to go about making policy.
Yeah, it's been sadly lacking in a lot of political arenas for a long time for a lot of reasons. But
it's again, we were talking about detachment and looking at it with compassion, but not with emotional charge. And this the science, and in fact, unfortunately, a lot of our policy is wrapped up around with emotional reactions. Mm-hmm. And we see this, I think, we see this with our immigration discussions. We see this with our rights. That abortion, I think, has been one of the most divisive issues that is hitting the country right now, where the majority of the country seems to wants to allow women to have choice, but those in power want to control it. And so there's this disconnect and a backlash and back and forth. And what I don't hear too much is dispassionate discussion. I hear high volume blame. And so are you
blame? I like that.
are you talking about having science-based discussions, in either one of those subjects? With abortion, you would say, when is viability? That might be a scientifically derived fact, maybe, I don't know. But is that the way the Transhumanist Party would approach that kind of issue?
We have deliberately not taken an official position on the abortion issue because it is such a multi-threaded issue. You've got the ideas of personhood, the ideas of agency, over personhood. You've got ideas of biological viability. But, a friend of mine wrote a science fiction novel called Solomon's Knife, which advocates something called transoption, where you take the fetus from an unwanted mother and implant it in a wanted mother. So technology to the rescue on the abortion question,
Oh, okay.
So I thought that was an elegant way that technology can end up addressing some of these very contentious issues. But you look at the history of civilization, religious reformations. How many people should be between you and God? The Civil War was about are whites supreme to non-whites? And should we be able to enslave them at will? There's all kinds of different parts of civilization that are at different stages at addressing these really fundamental wedge questions. You could say the Islamic world has not yet had the Reformation that went in the Christian world. We had the Protestant Reformation where, they have not undergone a sea change like that in their religion. Just for example, not to single out, Christians and Islam, but we have to be tolerant of each other, and we have to, one of my libertarian mentors, Robert Lefebvre, said, "Freedom is the one thing you can't have unless you're willing to give it to someone else."
Yes.
And that's kind of a nice way of stating you could say the same about human rights, the same about a lot of things. But I think coupled with it's more blessed to give than to receive, and that we are not competitive by nature. We've been kind of brainwashed to be taught that that's our history, but no, our history is actually one of cooperation and love and peace. And it would be great if we can return to those days of yesteryear where we are taught that.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you're talking about the lifespan of human race, you really couldn't survive alone. You you didn't have claws, you didn't have sharp teeth. You pretty much had to band together to survive.
Especially true of humans. Yeah, we're the most longest to mature animal there is. We spend the longest in the childlike state, where we need like pretty a couple years of nurturing. Some animals hit the ground running, literally.
Yeah.
They're born,
A good image, but yeah, so I think the idea that we compete is, obviously there's different instincts, and there's what we call the maternal instinct, but men have it too. You look at people like looking at children who are defenseless, and they want to protect them, and this is a natural feeling. And your competition for who's going to be I don't want to say who's going to get the biggest piece of the turkey. I don't know, but there are competing instincts, and I think as you grow and mature, you become wiser in which instincts you allow to take over, and which instincts you can just say, oh, that is a instinct that I know leads to suboptimal behavior on my part, and I'm going to choose to behave differently, and I can change my mind. This is the way that I think of it: is stimulus, response. I might as well be a Pavlov's dog. It's stimulus, contemplation, response.
We can choose the better angels of our nature, as one of the phrases goes.
No, that's beautifully said, and I know it was a quote, but it's exactly what I'm getting at. And but I also think that what I'm getting from you about the Transhumanist Party is that technology is our friend, and when I often think that technology, the way we look at as a society, technology is either going to solve all of our problems magically, or it's something that divorces us from our human nature. Do you get that kind of feedback when you're trying to get your message out?
Well, I tend to think tools are neutral. They can be used for good or ill, depending on the intent of the tool user or wielder. But I also think that technology is part of the evolutionary runway that we're on. And nature, a lot of people say, oh, nature is great. Nature's actually pretty cruel and pretty not so nice all the time. So we should give technology maybe a tad more respect, but not to the point where we're destroying nature. But we want to augment both systems in the most intelligent way. Something that occurred to me, I'm being in politics. There's this quote that I love about politics, because you talked about fear and competition, and the quote goes like this: "Politics is the system that uses the votes of the poor and the money of the rich to promise them protection from each other." And if you think about it, that's really the path that it's taken. It's kind of, and the guys pulling the strings are skimming off the the benefits from running a system like that.
Yeah, it's
It's almost
interesting.
like war profiteering. It's
You wonder what Adams and Jefferson would think of how it's going on now. But it's a Buckminster Fuller time period where I think about appropriate technology, using technology appropriately, and in the it's like the Darwinian expression, survival of the fittest. It's also misinterpreted as a survival of the most fit, but it's the one who fits best. And so the appropriate technology is the one that fits best. So you don't build wind when there's no wind power facilities where there's no wind, and you don't build a desalinization plant in the middle of a desert. You do it where it's appropriate. And this type of technology can fit alongside nature, can modify the harmful effects of nature, and channel the beneficial effects. And I see no conflict, and no inherent conflict between the two.
I would just point out it's the fitness of your offspring too, because you could be fit, but if you have no offspring, you're kind of irrelevant to evolution at that point.
That's a good point. Yes.
So you have to include the offspring in the equation. I don't have any offspring, so ladies, I'm available. No, this is just a big dating scam for me.
Yes, swipe left.
You found out. Yeah, I'm just running, for vice president to attract the most fit mother for my offspring. Fulfill my evolutionary duty. But no, this generation that's alive now is potentially going to be the indefinite longevity generation. They say that life and extension technology is advancing at such a rate that I think by the year 2038, if you can live to 2038, for every year you live, there will be enough technology to take a year off your aging, or at least delay your aging, if not reverse it. So, I mean, there's different estimates on this, but then people say, well, yeah, only the rich are going to be able to extend their lives, and that's not going to be fair because they have the biggest Rolodexes, and young people won't have a chance against, competing with these people, these indefinite immortals, that are sharing the civilization with them. So there's lots of interesting debates and discussions that.
Yeah,
one of the things I love about this movement, it's like never a dull moment. And it's like every
I just went down a rabbit hole.
Yeah, right.
Elon Musk and Bill Gates, the only survivors, but it's,
let's hope not. Well, I mean, it's better than extinction, I guess. I mean,
yeah. So life extension is part of the transhumanist.
Yeah, a big. I would say, Tim Leary had the three things: space migration, intelligence increase, life extension. He called it SMILE back in the 80s when he was doing his stand-up philosopher touring around. But yeah, he kind of was an early transhumanist ideal promoter.
Did you say those three things again?
Yeah. So it's SMILE. SM is space migration. We have the the galaxy on the flag.
Stars and stripes.
I with a squared, so that's intelligence squared, or intelligence increase.
Okay.
And then that's the I in SMILE, and then the LE in SMILE, life extension. And he said you need all three of those, because any one of them would kind of fall down on its own. It's kind of a three-legged stool. If you had the space migration without the intelligence increase in the life extension, you got a lot of crippled, old, suffering people floating around in space. You get the intelligence increase without the space migration, and you get a lot of neurotic people, not having what to do with their intelligence. You get the life extension without the intelligence and the space, then you got an overcrowded planted to get off my lawn.
Right.
Types.
Right.
So if you put them all together, I think you get like the nub of the extropian, or the anti-extropy transhumanist philosophy. There was a magazine called it was actually a combo zine that I subscribed to back in the 80s called Claustrophobia, and it had the L5 News, Life Extension Report, the Brain Mind Bulletin. It was little newsletters from each of these three disciplines, and they were all bound together, comb bound together, and you could get it for like half or 80% less than subscribing to all of them, separately. So I thought that was a great idea for.
Yeah.
And,
all right. So now, so fact and evidence-based policy discussions, and you think that this is, as you said earlier, scalable. You can do it on a local, national, global level. And these are taking what is beneficial about technology and utilizing it appropriately. Am I so far summing it up correctly?
Yeah, and it's easy to advocate for things, but I think you have to give people the tools and the DIY instructions to actually say, okay, here's the 2 week plan to go out and set up, for instance, a tool lending library. Some libraries not just check out books, but you can check out tools. What if we expanded that to seeds? Some libraries give out food seeds to grow food. And then we could extend that to talent lending. You can set up a exchange system, trading hours of talent with your neighbors and with trusted people. So, and guess what? This didn't require any new laws or any government agencies to do this. These are all things that can be done with peer-to-peer kind of voluntary open source initiatives. And that's really what I want to bring to the political sphere, to get rid of this fear-based racket kind of politics.
Yes, because so much of our decision making now is based on fear, and I know from my personal life, and some of it's described in the book Behind Me Freedom, that when I was making decisions based out of fear, I was making poor decisions.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people that will try to make money off people's fears too. That's
exactly.
Like one of the easiest rackets out there. So yeah, we got to find these people, make them accountable, call out their actions, make their actions, transparency and accountability is what's gonna, like they say, sunlight's the disinfectant.
Yes.
So
yeah.
That's
so I'm very very intrigued. And I've opened my mind, if I haven't changed it, about the Transhumanist Party. Thank you for being on the show. I'm running low on time. Is there anything else that you would like to tell us about the party or about you, about what your motives are for being in the world of politics? Anything that you would like to close the show with? And take your time.
I'm very grateful that I had amazing parents and amazing siblings that I grew up with. Not everyone, had a good childhood, but if you did have one, you kind of, what's that they say, give back, or to whom much has been given, much is expected, So I'm just trying to return the favor. I have an indwelling faith in this is an intentional, loving, greater creation. I'm not kind of exclusivist when it comes to that greater creator theory, because I think everyone should be free. Well, this is part of the Universal Life Church. There's basically two tenets: do that which is right, and worship God in your own way. And I think you can't go too far wrong with those. There's a movement of Christian transhumanists, and they will point out, Jesus was like the first transhumanist. He was like raising the dead and healing people and making them smarter and promising them space migration. But there's actually a later religion called Cosmism that was in Russia, and they believe that it's part of our religious destiny to enliven the universe and resurrect the dead and do all these kinds of grandiose religious achievements. So I'm grateful for what I've been given by the universe, and I want to pass it on. So thanks for letting me come on your show, and you're doing the same thing. Good for you.
Thank you. And so we will talk again. And excuse me for doing
Please mute your phones.
Yes, I did mute it. My computer also tells me I should unplug it from my computer. Good tip. I'm going to change my mind about my phone.
Oh, bad technology.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really
enjoyed this too. Thanks.
And so I'm going to do one thing, like I'm going to go to an outro, and you and I can talk afterwards, or you can take off. But
I did think of one other thing I want to plug. I'm run a nonprofit called PermaTrail, which is the idea of a freedom of movement trail around the world. So you can go to perma, as in permaculture, and trail, all one word, permatrail.org. And that will point you toward the idea of a human rights corridor for everyone to freely move around the world.
Permatrail.org.
Yeah. So there's my plug. You plug your book. I don't have a book yet, but stay tuned.
Good for you. It was fun, and we'll do it again.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching this week's episode of Change Your Mind. And the Roman god Janus in my lower left-hand corner is going to be replaced by a more modern version, because we can change our minds. And just remember, every weekend,